You're now kicking it with Brother Smalls, and I'm here with multi-hyphenate comedian, actor, director, producer, writer, solo powerhouse performer, Mr. Don Reed. Hey, Don, how you doing?
Brother Smalls, I'm feeling good today.
Oh, it's great to have you, man. I want to remind folks to share, like, comment, and subscribe to Kicking It with Brother Smalls, where we deliver content that's dedicated and designed to inform, uplift, elevate, and inspire. Hey, Don, I wanted to ask you, when did you start making people laugh?
It kind of started because I had some tics as a kid. Everybody called me Blinky because I was always blinking my eyes. They said, "Hey, Blinky, what's up? You about to start a windmill or a hurricane situation over here?" And so I didn't know they were laughing at me. I thought they were laughing with me. But through that, getting that attention, I started messing around in a music class. My mother told me one day, we were riding in the car with my brother and my sister. We were singing a song. I forget what song we were all singing. And my mother looked back. She said, ooh, Donnie, no, not you though. Not you. You don't need to be singing, baby. You have to find something else for you. I was like, oh no. So what I started doing is I started doing the instruments in the song. And she's like, oh, that's good. And my father said, oh yeah, baby, you're gonna go somewhere with that. So I started doing that and I started messing around in classes. In my music class, the instructor was at Oakland High School. They didn't have any musical instruments. He had an attitude about it. He'd play an album. They had albums back in the day. And he'd play an album and he'd say, if the school could afford a horn, it would sound like this. If we could afford drums, it would sound like this. And I started doing the instruments. He's like, hey, Don, that's pretty good. Then I started distracting class, but he didn't know it. I sit in the back of the class, Brother Smalls, and go. He's like, apparently there's a bird in the room and the people around me, but I never told him it was me. So that started the humor and people in class laughing like that.
Gotcha. When did your teacher find out that it was actually you?
Never found out. That was, his name was Mr. Myers, and he never found out because the people around never gave it away. We never gave it away.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I was watching a video of you and it seems like you like to drive. Do you like to drive?
I love to drive. You know, I got a nice car back in 2012, and I was leaving a production in LA and driving up to the Bay Area, Oakland. I live in LA. I spend over half the time in the Bay Area, Oakland, San Francisco, Berkeley, and I was driving back and forth, and what I found is whenever I flew back and forth, the flight was over in 50 minutes. I was there. People were like, hey, let's go to lunch or whatever else. But if I was in the car, it's a 5.5 hour drive from LA to Oakland or Oakland to LA. And I had 5.5 hours of focused time to myself. So I get my recorder out, you know, staying safe while I'm driving, just turn on my recorder, and I would throw material or show concepts or scenes into my recorder. Then later on, I would transcribe them. I end up writing 5 of my one-man shows that way. On a long drive, boom, focus. And people would say, you're putting all those miles on your car. And then I read this article in the WGA, Writers Guild magazine, and they were talking about the different ways that writers find their muse or the way that they're most creative. And the article was called Finding Your Room. And one writer, his way was he would set a bathtub full of water as hot as he could stand it. He would put this board across it and he'd get a legal pad and a pen. And he would write until the water temperature went down to cold. If he was on a roll, he heated up a little bit more, keep going. But by the time the water was cold, he would get out. Another guy wrote in the closet. Another guy wrote in the water of the ocean. He'd get ideas and get in and out of the ocean and leave notes. But I found out after people would jam me up about driving, this one guy in the article said, I take a 4 or 5 hour drive and just drop ideas. And I was already doing that for years. I was like, yeah. And that guy wrote Shrek, Pirates of the Caribbean, and a bunch of other big movies. I said, see, I'm not a fool for driving around in my car.
No, that's awesome. Now you've been dubbed a solo performer powerhouse. How did the solo act come? I mean, did you say, "Hey, I wanted to do a solo act"? How did that kind of? How did you get there?
Well, this leads towards people being yourselves and getting to real you early on. It took me a long time to get to the truth in my comedy. Everybody who's very large in comedy is telling in some form a very vulnerable truth and making it funny for the most part, or vulnerable ideas that you don't think you should say, or things that are personal you don't think you want to share. So I was making a good living off of only doing characters and sound effects and impersonations, but I wasn't dare going to talk about being in that religion that rhymes with Jehovah's Witnesses and my stepfather pressing me into that and knocking on doors and running away to go live with my real dad, who I didn't know was a pimp. So I went through this, straight lace during the week. And then after knocking on doors on Sunday, I'd go to my father's house and I was like, wow, maybe there's a party over here. And then back home, straight lace, and then back over there. Ooh, ooh. And I didn't want to talk about that. But once I was telling these stories at parties, barbecues, hanging out with people, and they would say, you need to do that on stage. I was like, And I finally started doing it back in 2008, and it completely changed my career. It's how I got some of my biggest deals by heading towards the truth. So I highly suggest any young listener or even a mature audience individual, if you're writing fiction, that can be very good if you're a strong fiction writer. But if you work from your truth, your life experience, it's going to go faster, smoother, and it'll have more authenticity. So that's what took so long. I mean, and then I ended up doing one-man shows. That's how it led there.
All right. So 2008, you decide to kind of, hey, I'm going to share more of who I am as a person. Now, again, people were saying, hey, you should do this. Was there anything else that, caused you to say, hey, I'm gonna go for it now?
One thing I was kind of at a threshold as far as you can go with just doing impersonations and sound effects. And I was making a good living, very, very good living, but it wasn't that next level. And I was wondering what had kept me right behind some of the best. And it wasn't until I started telling these true stories that people, even my peers, some of the biggest people I can imagine, came out and said, oh my goodness, this is on point. Now, I'm also aware of the fact that there was a window of time that I was at NBC as an ad executive, mm-hmm. and a guy in my office who was an ex stand-up and a TV writer said, hey, I'm going to do a one-person show. I said, what's it about? He said, it's about my family, strict Jewish Orthodox family having pressure on me about what I'm going to do with my life. Am I just going to do creative stuff all the time? He said, how'd you grow up? I said, I grew up in Oakland, stepfather, Jehovah's Witness, real father, pimp. He's like, you need to do a show about that. And so I wrote it, but then I was afraid to do it. And I finally did it 2008.
No, wow. Talking about your story, you have a real interesting story about your college years.
Oh, yeah. I grew up in Oakland, and then I got into a speech class, and an instructor told me, you're not a chiropractor, you're a comedian. I have to back up there. I want to be a chiropractor since the 10th grade. I knew every muscle and bone in the human body, metacarpals, metatarsals, sacroiliac, thoracic region, lumbar. I knew I was getting straight A's in physiology and anatomy, and I wanted to be a chiropractor for the longest. And then one of the prerequisite classes was a speech class. And I had a lot of speaking experience from knocking on all those doors and giving speeches in the congregation. So by the time I was in a speech class, I was like, boo, what's up in here? And the instructor said, you need to go with this. And so that led the route to being on the speech team. Then I got recruited to UCLA on a speech and debate scholarship. Now, a lot of people, they hear you got recruited. What sport did you play? Basketball, football? I said, no, I was speaking, my father would always say, my son's going to college for talking. He using his mind. He ain't bouncing no ball or nothing. So it was kind of exciting. But while I was there, Brother Smalls, I got in a situation where it wasn't enough money and I let pride get in the way. I did not want to call anybody back home. I could not call them and tell them I didn't make it. And so I started sleeping in dorm rooms, crashing on couches, hanging out at people's houses and, pretending like, oh, I could go back to my room right now. But since we had a couple of beers in there, like, you might as well crash here, moving around and then having to kill time by sometimes sleeping on the bus. I knew the bus would go this long route, but at 3 a.m. it would end. So from 3 to 6, I either slept at the bus stop or sometimes I slept on campus. I had this one thing I would do at UCLA that we had this room, the study room, and I worked in the study room till the late hours of the night, till I was the last person there. And the last person would leave, and then I would crash there in the offices on this couch. And then I had to get up early enough, though, and change my shirt and be sitting there. So when somebody came in and said, "You here already?" I'm like, "Yep," up on top of it. The good thing about it, though, was I was there all that time. So I really was working on my speeches. So I really was winning the tournaments against Duke and Harvard and Dartmouth and all these people, because all that time, maybe God had an angle for me that there's nothing else to do but work on my speeches. Didn't have a TV, didn't have a place to go. So I'm just going over my speeches over and over. By the time I got to the tournament, it was over.
You were ready. So you wanted to be a chiropractor initially, and then it turned into, acting, what have you. How did you actually break into the industry?
I broke into the industry by being in a comedy team. They had a funny event in intercollegiate public speaking. It's called Speech to Entertain. And I was doing the Speech to Entertain event. There are a bunch of different debate and persuasive, extemporaneous speaking, but I did the Speech to Entertain event. And then when I went to the national tournament back in the day, I won the national tournament against hundreds of schools. You had to actually win 3 first place in your state to even qualify for this top tournament. And I won 10 first place. So I was ready, went to the tournament, I won. And you had to be funny, but you had to make a point as well. And when I won that national tournament for UCLA, the coach and a bunch of people were like, "You need to go be a comedian. You need to really go try to do this." And so I was scared to go by myself at first. So I was in a comedy team for a while. Me and a white guy, black guy and a white guy on stage. What's not funny about that? We didn't have no material. Like, we're black, he's white. Is that funny? Like, nope, better go get some material. Paul Mooney's like, no, brother, you need more than that. You need a lot more than that, brother. Right? So we broke off. I did my own thing. And then so I was going up at the Comedy Store and the Improv, doing 5 minutes at a time. Became a regular over time. Then Robert Townsend saw me, and that changed a lot.
Talk about Robert Townsend. I think he's brilliant, and I think he and Keenen Ivory Wayans, one of my favorite films is Hollywood Shuffle.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
So that's one of my favorite films, man. And I understand that you had a part to play in that. Tell us about that experience.
I leaving the unhoused homeless window at UCLA, I got into a place called the Kipling Hotel. It's a retirement hotel where, in exchange for serving breakfast 5 days a week, you get free room and board. Great opportunity for students, but also some fast talking, dealer making, and some other questionable people live there too. So it's a very interesting situation. I have a one-man show about that called the Kipling Hotel. But anyway, while I was there, I got a call one day, and we'd all been doing stand-up. Keenen, Damon, Martin Lawrence, Tommy Davidson, everybody. We're all doing stand-up at this place called the Comedic Theater on 43rd and Crenshaw in Los Angeles. And every week people were coming down. And then Robert said, hey man, I saw this character you do in your stand-up, and I want it to be in the movie if you're down. I said, yeah, I'm in. He said, check this out though. I ain't got no money, but I got a whole bunch of chicken wings and gas for your car. And so we come to the set. And he wasn't joking. These wings were, and he knew they needed to be that good because we wouldn't get no checks of any kind, right? And then he say, everybody follow me to the gas station, and we line up our cars, and he fill up one gas tank after another off his credit cards, just like fill up everybody's gas tank, make sure our stomachs were full, and we come to the set each day and do our scenes. But the thing that was the topper, the real kicker was after Robert, used his money and edited the film and finished it. And then when it was completed, he was looking for a distribution deal and went to different studios, and Samuel Goldwyn, I did a deal for him, but he told him, what he did is he took notes on every hour, every minute we were on the set, even overtime. He kept a record of it. He said, if you can pay all my actors and get them all in the Screen Actors Guild, in the union, then we don't have a deal. And he stood by that. That's how I got in the Screen Actors Guild. I got retroactive pay for every day that I went down there for wings and gas. Now there was checks and residual checks into perpetuity. So Robert's a man of his word. And he gave many of us the vision to look at yourself as an actor, writer, director. He said, you're doing it already in your stand-up, Don. You're already acting, writing, directing every night. They'll try to tell you it's some big secret. But when you can do stand-up, you're already doing that. You're producing it, you're writing it, you're directing it, all your blocking, all your movement. He said, you do a lot of movement on stage. That's the same movement would be something that's following a camera. You got it. So I owe a lot to Robert Townsend. Then the HBO specials, of course.
Wow, that's some story. That's some story. Thanks for sharing that. I wanted to ask you, I guess along those lines, when you look back at your career, you look back at what you started and what you've done, who would you say had the greatest impact on you professionally?
Robert Townsend is way up there, but I have to give a dual impact to a very specific couple. They were a couple. Robert Townsend was supposed to do this project for PBS, and he had the lead role in it, but he had to go do a soldier story. He had to go do a soldier story with Denzel and all those guys. And so he called me and said, hey, I got you hooked up in something. I hope you can deliver. It was the lead role in this PBS special that had a slight comic tone, but mostly drama, about a clown who was in the Korean War and came back an alcoholic and pretty troubled. But he knew how to juggle and he knew how to make kids laugh, but he was still in a lot of pain. And the community was trying to gather around him. And he said, now don't get intimidated when I tell you who it is, who's directing it and who's playing your mother. He said, Ossie Davis wrote it and directed it, and Ruby Dee's playing your mother. I was like, yeah. Smalls, I was so intimidated, but I kept it together. And I was acting in certain scenes. I was looking over at the end of takes at Ossie Davis. He said, let's take a walk, young brother. Let's take a walk. He said, look here, this role is your responsibility. Don't look at me. I hired you because you're an actor. And I know you're good. I saw some videotape on you. So here's the thing. Rise to the occasion and do a great job. I know you can do it. It's your role. It's your responsibility. And Ruby Dee's like, baby, I know you got this. I'm going to be here for you. They say, and actor. And she'd be right there playing my mother. And so it's not one, it's a duo, Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee, and all the things they had laid down, all the legacy they had created. And Robert Townsend handed that opportunity to me. But seeing Ossie Davis as a director, writer, of age, in black. After everything they went through, I'm sure they had 90,000 reasons to stop and to give up, but that wasn't happening. So that experience, I think that's like, boom, the one that hit me in the chest and the forehead and the soul and the mind all at once,
Wow. I mean, I guess you went home after those days. Like, is this for real? Is this real?
Yeah, it was almost surreal because it happened so fast. It wasn't like I went in, auditioned, waited with my agent. The weeks were going by. It was like Robert was going to do it. He said next week. Robert told me later after I completed and had done a fine job. Robert said, Ossie said something to me but I want to tell you because I didn't want to make you nervous. When I said Don Reed can do it, he said, this guy better be good. This guy better be good. And now that's a running joke between me and some friends. Whenever somebody gives a referral, they say, hey man, this guy can do all your graphic. This guy better be good. And that's how
goodness. Wow. Wow. You're you're an amazing performer. And I've seen you do some really interesting things as it relates to the crowd and your intros. Your intros are so, unique. Can you tell us a little bit about what goes into that process of like your intros, even like for your shows?
Yes, it started at the Comedy Act Theater when I'm going on in any night. It's, as I mentioned, Jamie Foxx, Martin Lawrence, Keenen, Damon Wayans, Robert Townsend, Rusty Cundiff, who ended up directing all of Chappelle's show. And so most people walk on the stage and say, hey, how's everybody doing? And I realized I had to set myself apart. So I started doing inventive intros. And one of the first things I thought to do was do a sound effect intro to get the audience pumping, going. That. And another big one was push it. Aw, push it. Have the audience go, push it. And then we get pumped up. And then I say, hey, how's everybody doing? So those different ways. And then I started moving into visual ways. Like, that still took time to get to the stage. I said, what would happen if when they say, ladies and gentlemen, Don Reed, boom, music came on. And I came to the stage in slow motion, like. And over years, different people have done comedy bits with slow motion. But the key that some of them miss is you have to blink in slow motion too. They'll be doing slow motion, but they'll be blinking normal. And I realized, like, when you turn your head, you have to go. Because that's what happens in real slow motion. You're blinking slow too. And that's what gives it its extra feel. But those intros came from trying to stand apart from the best, doing something unique to get the show started.
Got it. Again, you had mentioned that you've been a producer and you worked at NBC. And you have a lot of different things under your resume. I was listening to the media mogul Byron Allen the other day, and he mentioned how being a comedian helped him in business. I wanted to ask you, do you believe that? And how has being a comedian helped you in all the other facets of your career?
Wholeheartedly. I actually believe probably some of the best comedians aren't even comedians. They're businessmen, and they're able to regale and draw in power meetings with laughter, a sense of humor. They have all the business sense, but they're also super likable with the humor. I found some of the best salesmen, people head of industry, are very funny. I know a guy who for many years was the CEO of a healthcare clothing company. This guy is hilarious. And part of the blaze is like, yeah, we're going to go to the power lunch and talk. And he's closing the deal on getting, global distribution of a brand new shoe or nurse's smock. But during that lunch or power dinner, he made you laugh hard too. And that's something that Byron Allen was able to access. And I've been able to access as I worked at NBC as a co-head of the voiceover division at Bung 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 at NBC. But I'd known Byron Allen for some years, and we were at a party in Beverly Hills at an apartment. It wasn't da 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 da. Somebody had an apartment, at least. The sister had an apartment in Beverly Hills. Like, well, we in here somehow, right? And we're hanging out, and he showed up. He had on a suit. Everybody was dressed kind of like, early 90s casual with, some Timbs on and some jeans. And he came in a suit, no tie, and said, hey, how's everybody doing? He's talking, but I said, how you doing, Byron? He said, man, Don, he said, I'm a little tired, man. I've been just pushing it. I said, so what you been doing? He said, I've been sitting at my dining room table, man, calling syndicated channels, just calling one after another and offering them free programming. I said, free programming? He said, yeah, I figured out a way that if you look at the wasteland of the hours, on the weekend, brother, when it's like 2 to 6 before real program starts, they got infomercials in there and a bunch of other stuff. He said, I realized if I created some likable, acceptable content, I could go to them and say, I'll offer you this programming for free. They said, for free? He said, yeah, just give me half of whatever the advertiser's paying you, whatever they're paying you for that time window. Just give me half of that. They said, okay, because they don't have to spend any money on the production, because sometimes they're trying to produce stuff and they're walking away with spending too much of that ad money to get it done. He said, just give me 50% and I'll give you programming. So he kept doing that with multiple stations around the country. And that's how he built an empire. And I was standing there in that living room as he's explaining to me that he's sitting at his dining room table, just cold calling people. Hey, how are you doing? Click. Hey, this is Byron Allen. Click. Hey, click. He had a good business sense of syndication and television distribution, though, because his mother was an executive at CBS and likely another network or studio for a while, but she was a big deal there. So she instilled that knowledge in him from an early age.
Wow. Wow.
But to get back to the circle around,
yes.
The sense of humor he brought into the boardroom and into his dynamics was how he truly broke through, having that drive and then being there in those meetings. And Byron Allen being funny, as I mentioned, the CEO from the healthcare clothing company, like that's an added factor to the whole thing, having done stand-up, being a comedian, and it's helped me as well.
Laughter is important. Laughter is very, very important. I think is this month mental health awareness month, or as it relates to mental health. I know that laughter is just very, very important. Like just for your well-being, laughter is very, very important. And so when you make people laugh, you're really kind of helping them, get through a lot of, different things in their life. Do you guys think about the, I don't know, so it's weighty, but do you think about the how you're helping people with laughter?
Usually it comes to me. It may be different for different comedians, but it comes to me after the fact when someone tells me. Like a woman came to me. She was coming to a show I was doing in Berkeley, in San Francisco. And she was coming every week. Every week she was coming. And I was like, this woman's been to this, and it's a play. So you can see it play more than once. It's different from stand-up. It's got a lot of comedy, but some dramatic depth as well. But she was coming every single week. And she must have come to this show 10, 15 times. And then later on, I saw her when I was doing another show. And she said, Don Reed, I need to tell you something. Remember I was coming to your show all the time? You almost probably thought I was a stalker, right? I said, a little bit. No. She said, no, Don, I was battling cancer. And I knew if I came to your show, I was going to be thinking about chemo. I was going to be thinking about troubles. I was going to be laughing, feeling good, and having an emotional release at your shows. So you don't even know you're doing that sometimes, but that's what you're giving people sometimes. And I remember when I told my father, I said, Daddy, I don't want to be a chiropractor anymore. I want to be a comedian. And he said, you do anything that starts with a C, huh? Right? That's what he said first. And then he said, baby, you know, laughter is the best medicine. You're still a doctor. So it was interesting that that was a perspective, laughter being the best medicine. But you don't think about it while you're on stage. You don't think about that. It's like after the fact when people approach you and say how it impacted them, and then it impacts you back because you get a financial return for doing well in this business, but the emotional return is insane and lasts longer than the money because the money sometimes goes away, but you still have the power of how you impacted people.
Wow. Actually, that goes right into my next question. I mean, comedy has historically been a genre in which, you know, controversial material, topics, and ideas could be shared. And so, you know, do you think that's changed in recent years?
Yeah, it's changed quite a bit. I have to say, you know, there's some great comedians who are really getting muscled down in terms of what they say. But my experience has been, I came from the super clean comedy troupe, from a Sinbad perspective. Just, I was always clean from like 87 all the way to 2006. It was crispy clean at all times. And then I started doing the one-man shows, the solo shows, and I had to tell the truth. And when I had to tell the truth, that involved having some language that was real. I mean, my father was a pimp. He didn't say darn, you know? He said some other stuff. And if you want to get that authentic message and know that the same person that language can come from, that pimp that people might look down on, is the same person who pushed me through college to end up at UCLA, then you can get a better balance of people. So I had to go to that truth. Like I said, I'm lucky to navigate having worked so clean. I know how to do a whole hour that's clean for a whole family, or I can get down if the moment calls for it. But usually it's never gratuitous. You know, I can find a way to either visually say that thing that you, ooh, how far are you gonna go? But I do have some, I season it. Some people, it's the reason why they're on stage. Their steak is, ooh, ooh, ooh. And then I said, ooh, and I said, ooh, and then, ooh, right? Yeah. But I season it with language where it's appropriate. And if you use too much anyway, it's gonna get burned out and you're like, okay, we already heard you say that word. You can't even save it for a punchline anymore. But you know, things have changed. Some people have also expanded and grown as far as diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging are concerned. That's changed. So you got to be wiser about that. Some people are like, I should be able to say whatever I want to say. But at the same time, are you growing at the same time? Are you just trying to hold on to being able to say whatever you want because you don't have the acumen to grow and see that we don't necessarily say that about people. There were phrases for people who had mental disabilities that people would call them phrases that we don't say anymore. We just like, you don't call anybody that. And people are like, oh no, I can be able to say what I want. And see how corny people are. Do you care? Do you have any empathy? Think about that as well. It's not about being corny. Do you have empathy?
Right. It's almost like, you know, do you want them to get it? You know, I actually had this conversation in the barbershop about words. And, you know, it's like, do you want the person to actually get the message? Right.
Right.
because you can kind of you can kind of say whatever you want to say, but if the message is not being received because of how you're saying it, then maybe you maybe rethink that.
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Where are you at now in your career? I mean, you've had a tremendous career. I mean, I would still be reading your resume if I started the show with just reading, what you've been a part of, right?
That's cool.
So, I mean, where are you at in your career?
I'm in a wonderful space because, a number of things have come into play in recent years that the work that I have been building in the theater is transitioning into being in other genres and other platforms. Let me say it that way. The best example would be the Tyler Perry business model, where his plays, he did the play, and the play became the movie, or the play and elements of the play became a TV series. And he wrote a lot of that stuff before things launched off, and then he just had bam, 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 here's another one, here's another one, here's another one. And he would also tape the play, sell that live production as a source of commerce, and then he would transition it to making it a feature film or a TV series. I'm right at that point. I have 8 solo shows, and almost each of them is the dynamic for a feature film or a television show. And now I've written those one-man shows where I'm doing it and playing 20 characters into things that are TV series where it would have a whole cast. The movie would have a whole cast. And it's very much like the business model that Tyler Perry is. So I've got feature film attached to a Disney person who has a deal there. I have Robert Townsend has agreed to shoot my first one-man show, East 14th, in Oakland at the Grand Lake Theater. And I think about that. I say, he directed Eddie Murphy and Raw, and now I'm in the mix. This is good. I have this new show coming up right now that I just signed a 5-year licensing agreement with Carson Entertainment Group, and also got licensing from Film Magic and Jeff Kravitz to do a one-man show about my career and where I am now. And it's called The Never Too Late Show. It's about the circuitous route from Oakland to late night TV and all the laughter and drama, deceit, and vindication and joy along that process. But it's got a wonderful message, I believe, about it being never too late, because I'm not the only person on the Never Too Late Show. You, in your 40s, 50s, 60s, you're on the Never Too Late Show as well. Don't give up. You still got that book. It's not too late to write that book. It's not too late to write that song. It's not too late to build that business. Never too late to fall in love. Everybody's on it that's of a certain age. And I want to let people know it truly isn't ever too late. Till you're gone, until you're taking that dirt nap, right? Until that moment, it's still going on.
Where does that come from? I mean, you got a lot of fight in you.
I have to say the real key to it is connected to a quote I heard. They said, the man who loves walking will go further than the man who's in love with the destination. Mm. And I love doing it, the doing of it. There's end results, there's checks, there's, recognition, there's distribution, but I love the act, the part of catching a train to Seattle or Oakland from LA and sitting there with my coffee and my laptop or a notepad and zoning in and watching trees go by and writing, or driving on the road and leaving hilarious messages into my service, or going to one of my WeWork offices in San Francisco or Portland and setting up everything. That whole ritual of getting ready and then doing the creative stuff, that right there, that I love that. And sometimes, and I want listeners to be aware of this, when you love that much, that can also end up being a place that you get stuck because it's so enjoyable. You might not do the next steps of saying, make sure this person gets this so it can be sold and seen. Because that sold and seen part is the only part that has any real rejection attached to it. You're not, as you're sitting there writing it, you go, this is great, this is amazing. But as soon as it leaves you and it goes out in the world, that's when somebody go like, no, I don't know if I like that. The other side is safe, but that part is also very gratifying for me. And luckily I have an outlet where I'm in partnership with the people in the Bay Area. So I'm in a theater at all times. My work's coming to life while I'm writing the TV series, while I'm writing the feature film, while I'm on the other things.
Man, that's so exciting, and I'm so grateful that you spent some of your time to kick it with me here on the show. I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Will you come back on the show?
Absolutely, 100%, 100%.
You heard that, America. You heard that. He's going to come back on the show. I'm so appreciative of Mr. Don Reed. You guys in the Bay Area, go to themarsh.org and get your ticket for the Never Too Late show. It's an amazing show. I might even book a ticket myself here from Texas to come see the show. It's a limited engagement, right?
So limited engagement for the previews, November, December, Sundays only, starting in November. But then the show will open in January, and then people can come on for quite a while before it goes to Chicago, Nashville, New York, and Austin.
Houston,
Okay.
Texas.
I have to figure it out. We have to figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. You won't be surprised if you see me in the show like, hey, what's going on? Oh man, thank you so much, Don. You guys get your tickets to see Mr. Don Reed. I want to thank you also for kicking it with us here on the Kicking It with Brother Small show. Remember to share, like, comment, and subscribe, and smile. Remember the smile, and remember, every heartbeat is grace. Cherish life and